Good morning, beautiful people. It's like, what time is it? It's morning. Good morning. Good afternoon, wherever you are, whatever time it is. Hello. It's good to see you. How you doing? It is the last day of January 2026. I want you to take a deep breath, okay? Take a couple. Whatever you had to do, okay? Whatever you had to do to get here. Congratulate yourself. Give yourself grace, you know? You made it. Lord of mercy. So hello there, beautiful people. Uh Welcome. I'm happy to see you. I passed out so hard last night. There was no dinner. I was donezo. Um I stayed at the computer till about 8 o'clock. And then I was like, I'm exhausted. Um and then the stuff that I was waiting for came across at like 8:30, 9 o'clock. At least that's, when I looked this morning, I was like, oh, look, it's in my email. What time did that happen? Shortly after I said, I'm donezo. So 5 a.m. there's a kangaroo there. So I'm going to guess Australia. Well, I'm happy to be, for us to gather and create a little bit of light together in the midst of democracy completely, collapsing on this 87th day of January. um, yeah, hit the like button, share the live. Last time we gathered to discuss this case, this is RBX. I got it now. This is RBX versus Spotify, wherein a couple months ago we read his initial complaint. And in short, he is alleging that botting happens. And because of that, other artists, including him, don't get a fair share from the royalty payout, streaming payout pot. And this lawsuit caught our attention. I mean, it probably would have caught our attention, but it really captivated us when we were reading it, because I don't read these things necessarily before we read them here. Just depends on sequencing. If I'm doing a scripted video, then obviously I have to read it and do my research. But if we're just coming here to a live, which is what happens 9 times out of 10, I don't read these things in detail before we read them together, so we can all be surprised together. And this lawsuit was very surprising because he said Drake is a botter. Basically, my words, reading between the lines, right? RBX specifically uses Drake as an example of somebody whose music is heavily botted, giving him an outsized share of the pot. And that caught all of our attention. And that was before another lawsuit where, and this is the most recent stake lawsuit. There are a couple that are happening, but there's a stake lawsuit where Drake, Aiden Ross, another person, and obviously Stake, are being sued in what is being proposed to be a class action lawsuit, wherein they allege that Drake, Aiden Ross, and this other person, last name Nguyen, I can't remember his first name. I'll get it wrong. We've established that, okay? I'll get it wrong. But the allegation in the lawsuit is that they used a feature on stake, the stake tipping feature, to move very large sums of money that are unreported and unregulated, um, in order to fund botting. Baby, that was a day. Yes, the Grand Wizard chat racist dude who works in some capacity with Livingston Allen. So, yes, that is correct. That is correct. So we read that lawsuit and started, going, oh my God. These are two completely separate actions that have nothing to do with each other, except that they both talk about the same thing. One lawsuit, RBX's lawsuit, uses Drake as an example. Drake is not being sued. He's not a party to this lawsuit. He just uses Drake as his core example. The other lawsuit, Drake is being sued, and the allegations are go crazy in that one. Go crazy. We were stupefied. I was choking on that stream. I couldn't get the words out. I was like, what the hell? What are we reading? What are we reading? Yeah, because they're pathetic. That's what pathetic people do. It was crazy. Oh my God, that was such a fulfilling moment. I love when we get into reading something and then we're like, wait a damn minute. And I love looking over to the chat and just seeing it, because right now it's really calm. The chat's moving very slowly. But when it gets into into the tea, it goes, and the comments are the best. So shout out to everybody who's watching. Hit the like button, share the live. Shout out to all of the members and the subscribers and the supporters in all of the places. And shout out to the best mod squad on the internet who's really been holding it down this week, okay? We had to give some people some wrenches because I've been here. I've been here quite a bit this week, sometimes 3 times a day. It's just ridiculous. Gang, gang. So we now have Spotify's response to, I almost said RBX's lawsuit. This lawsuit was initially against Spotify US and then all the other Spotifys around the world. I mean, wait, let me think. I've got to make sure I'm talking about the correct lawsuit before I get all wrong. This lawsuit was against Spotify and then other Spotify entities around the world. Yesterday, or the day before yesterday, it's been a week. What do you want from me? We're on the 94th day of January. Within the last 36 hours, a joint stipulation to dismiss came onto the docket. And basically what it says is the parties have agreed to dismiss this case against the international Spotify entities and only sue Spotify US, and that they have it's a full agreement of like, this is how we will handle any judgments should we lose the case. This is a guarantee from those other entities and Spotify USA that Spotify USA will be able to satisfy it. They laid out some specificity around discovery, and that plaintiffs will be able to go for discovery against those international entities as if they were a party to the lawsuit. So this is why it's a joint stipulation. They've hammered some things out where, the foreign entities, I should say foreign instead of international, the foreign entities have come to RBX's lawyers and said, suing all of us is ridiculous. And they've said things like, well, we may need discovery into one of those foreign entities. And they've said, okay, you can have that. Well, how do I know that Spotify USA is going to be able to satisfy a judgment if we win? That's not a problem, things like that. So they've put that on paper and they've submitted that to the judge for approval. And that is why, let me check before so I don't know if I believe that this motion to dismiss is just on the part of Spotify USA, and that would be why. So for anybody who pays really close attention to the details, what about the other entities? Either this is a joint response or the other entities are just not responding because they have submitted that joint stipulation to the judge, even though it hasn't yet been signed off on. If it is denied, I would imagine it's for technical reasons. And they just need to fix something and then resubmit it. But that's what is happening, and that's what we're going to look at. Okay, great. Okay, great. So they have taken their response in two parts. This first one is 26 pages, but they've separated out these issues in two parts, right? There's a motion to dismiss, and then there's also, can they preemptively dismantle the attempt to make this a class action lawsuit? And that is a separate document. Okay? So one document is motion to dismiss, straightforward, and then the other one is whatever their argument is about certifying this as a class action lawsuit. Oh my God, this is really brilliant. What time is it where you are? This is I can't come up with something like this early in the morning. Dan Jr. says Drake is the Barry Bonds of rap, holds records, but the numbers are tainted. Big asterisks coming onto the record books. You know what's interesting that I saw that made me kind of giggle yesterday? I saw a report that Canada has started producing a series of commemorative stamps to honor hip hop. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Your support has been, you're about that, and I appreciate you. I appreciate $2 contributions, and I appreciate this one. Docket fund. Thank you. What was it? Oh yeah, the stamps. So as soon as the report started, I just started chuckling to myself. I said, I know good and hell well I'm not about to have to go break the news that Drake is about to get a stamp. No, Drake is not about to get a stamp, but he might get a stamp in 20 years. Okay. He might get a stamp in 20 years. They released 3 stamps. I can't remember who the artists are. They're Canadian, obviously. And they're from back in the day. Back in the day. So, but yeah, that made me chuckle. That made me chuckle. I said, "Okay, oh Canada." So at some point in time, since they're talking about, they're gonna have to wait until he's, an old school legend, but Drake will get a stamp. Hit that like button when you come in. It's gonna be a while, but Drake will get a stamp in Canada. They're really beautiful stamps too, by the way. I mean, I was like, these are proper. These are proper. So, yeah. But if I had seen like Drake in the first batch, I would have been like, what the starting alive? Like, what the hell is going on? But no, they were artists from the 80s and very early 90s. Okay. Yes, that is that. Thank you very much. I mean, we know where it started, but that's pinpointing that it was a whole campaign. It was a whole thing. It was a whole discussion, and it was worthy. The post office has gotten a lot better about just come on now, be cool. And for the most part, their stamps really are. Right? They're good looking. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick so we can see. So the people can see. Clip this real quick. This picture only has 2 of them, but I wanted it to be I'm trying to move quickly and also wanted it to be something that folks would be able to see. But they have released 3 altogether. Those are fire. Thank you very much. So, in the future, in the future, when we're all older and grayer, Drake gonna get one of these stamps, but they are really beautiful. Mhm. It's giving a couple things. I mean, it's a beautiful homage, I think, all the way around. Those are fire. Hey, good to see you, good to see you. Alright. Let's get back to the Spotify response. And yeah, I do believe it's Spotify USA because, again, they've come to that joint stipulation to dismiss the lawsuit against the other parties. This is just kind of forward filler. Table of contents and table of authorities. That's all their case law. Oh, they got a lot of it. The plaintiff in this case, an artist known as RBX, asserts claims against Spotify based largely on allegations that a different artist's music may have been subjected to artificial streaming, activity where unknown bad actors use bots and other technical means to impersonate authentic listening activity and inflate the count of how many times a particular song is played. Plaintiff does not allege that Spotify had anything to do with that conduct. To the contrary, he admits that Spotify prohibits artificial streaming, devotes significant resources to detect, prevent, and remedy such activities, removes artificial streams it detects from stream counts, and imposes financial penalties for labels and distributors who violate its rules. Plaintiff claims, nevertheless, that Spotify has failed to adequately combat such conduct by third parties and that he received a relatively lower amount in royalty payments as a result. But the fundamental legal problem with plaintiff's claims is that he has no direct relationship with Spotify. He does not directly license his music or upload it to Spotify. Spotify, accordingly, does not owe any royalties directly to him. Plaintiff attempts to circumvent this lack of a relationship with Spotify by instead seeking to hold Spotify liable in tort and to challenge Spotify's representations about its artificial streaming efforts and policies under California's unfair competition law. Those claims are fatally flawed as a matter of law and must be dismissed. First, plaintiff's negligence claim fails because California law does not recognize the broad tort duty plaintiff seeks to impose. That is, a novel and unprecedented duty to protect music rights holders from the conduct of third parties, here, third party artificial streamers. In California, it is black letter law that there is no tort based duty to protect against harm caused by third parties unless there is a special relationship between the parties, Here, there is no such special relationship. This failure alone bars plaintiff's negligence claim. And under California's economic loss doctrine, the absence of such a special relationship also precludes plaintiff from pursuing a claim for negligence resting on all alleged harms that are purely economic. Plaintiff's claim for a violation of California's UCL is equally defective. Plaintiff has not satisfied the pleading requirements of Rule 9 that apply to claims sounding in fraud. The complaint does not even plead that plaintiff, in fact, relied on any alleged misrepresentations, and his attempt to obtain equitable relief under the UCL fails under binding Ninth Circuit precedent. For these and other reasons detailed below, the court should dismiss the complaint in its entirety with prejudice. Background about Spotify. In keeping with its mission, Spotify takes misuse of its service seriously. As the complaint acknowledges, Spotify devotes significant resources to combating the industry-wide problem of artificial streaming. Its policies prohibit artificial streaming. It deploys methods to detect, prevent, and remedy artificial streaming on its platform. It conducts daily cleaning to ensure artificial streams do not count towards public stream numbers. And it imposes penalties on labels and distributors when flagrant artificial streaming is detected on their content. A variety of bad actors can be responsible for artificial streaming, including paid third-party marketing and promotional services. Spotify is proud to be a founding member of the Music Fights Fraud Alliance, a global task force aimed at eradicating streaming fraud. Plaintiff Eric Dwayne Collins, whose stage name is RBX, is a California-based rap artist whose music is available on Spotify. I thought they said his music wasn't on Spotify. Plaintiff's theory is that any artificial streaming of another artist's music, the complaint focuses almost exclusively on Drake, another rap artist, ultimately results in an underpayment of royalties owed to plaintiff. Based on that theory, plaintiff asserts two causes of action. First, he contends that Spotify is negligent for allegedly taking insufficient measures to combat artificial streaming. Second, he alleges that Spotify has made false or misleading statements about its efforts to combat artificial streaming in violation of California's unfair competition law. In describing how Spotify operates, the complaint fails to provide critical context. Most notably, plaintiff fails to mention that Spotify, like other digital streaming services, does not license music directly from or owe royalties directly to RBX or any other artist. Spotify instead licenses music catalogs from record labels, distributors, and other rights holders. Those licensors, in turn, pay individual artists like RBX in accordance with their respective agreements, to which Spotify is not a party. For that reason, as Spotify informs artists exactly when and how much artists get paid depending on their agreements with their record label or distributor. To survive dismissal, a complaint must contain sufficient factual matter accepted as true to state a claim for relief that is plausible on its face. Threadbare recitals of the elements of a cause of action supported by mere conclusory statements do not suffice. That exact case law language is in the order to dismiss Drake v. UMG. That exact citation. Threadbare recitals of the elements of cause of action supported by mere conclusory statements do not suffice. Ah, I love my brain. Where the well-pleaded facts do not permit the court to infer more than the mere possibility of misconduct, there is no plausible claim for relief. Mere recitation of legal conclusions is not enough, and courts are not bound to accept as true a legal conclusion couched as a factual allegation. What's crazy is if Drake's case were decided, they would have been able to cite that in this. I mean, it is decided, but he's appealing, so that caveat. But this is the rooted case law, so but that's just funny to me. The court should not accept as true allegations that are merely conclusory, unwarranted deductions of fact, or unreasonable inferences. Dismissal can be based on either a lack of cognizable legal theory or the absence of sufficient facts alleged under a cognizable legal theory. Under California law, a plaintiff alleging negligence must establish number one, a legal duty, two, breach of that duty, three, causation, and four, damages. Plaintiff will not be able to prove any of these elements. His theories of causation and damages rest on a fundamental mischaracterization of how Spotify operates, and his conclusory assumption that any artificial streaming automatically results in an underpayment of royalties to him is both inadequately pleaded and mistaken. But the court never needs to reach these issues because the claim fails as a matter of law for two independent reasons. First, plaintiff has not alleged that Spotify owes him a legal duty. And second, California's economic loss rule bars plaintiff's negligence claim entirely because that claim seeks to recover only economic damages. California law does not recognize the novel duty plaintiff seeks to impose on Spotify. Recovery for negligence depends on a threshold matter on the existence of a legal duty of care. Plaintiff's negligence claim here does not clear that threshold. Plaintiff's negligence theory that Spotify has not, in his view, taken sufficient steps to stop misconduct by third parties runs headlong into black letter California law. The general rule is that there is no duty in tort to protect another from the conduct of a third party. This rule has deep roots in the law and derives from the common law's distinction between misfeasance and nonfeasance and its reluctance to impose liability for the latter. This case does not fall within any of the exceptions to that general rule. As the California Supreme Court has explained, a defendant cannot be held liable in negligence for harms it did not cause unless there are special circumstances, such as a special relationship to the parties, that give the defendant a special obligations to offer protection or assistance. I mean, I don't know the case law, but I can already imagine what RBX's lawyer's reply is going to be to that section. California law requires that courts engage in a two-step inquiry. Courts must first assess whether there is a special relationship between the parties. Even if a special relationship does exist, a legal duty is not automatic. The court then considers whether relevant policy considerations call for an exception to the asserted duty. The complaint here fails at the first step, and because there is no special relationship, there is no need to reach the Rowland factors, the second step. The relationship between Spotify and plaintiff bears no resemblance to recognized examples of special relationships that give rise to an affirmative duty to protect. Parents and children, colleges and students, employers and employees, common carriers and passengers, and innkeepers and guests. Those are examples of special relationships in the case law. What these relationships have in common is that each gives the victim a right to expect protection from the defendant and has an aspect of dependency in which one party relies to some degree on the other for protection. In other words, special relationships generally require that the plaintiff be particularly vulnerable and dependent upon the defendant, who correspondingly has some control over the plaintiff's welfare. So I can see RBX's lawyers arguing basically just that. Like, yeah. And we're okay. There may be other examples of special relationships that were left out of this. I don't really know. Because again, lawyers pick what benefits their argument the most, right? So we're probably going to see the same citation in the reply on RBX's side, basically saying the same thing, but flipping it. Like, yes, this is a special relationship. There is a duty of care there that Spotify has. I can definitely see them making that argument. Again, I don't know what case law they'll use. There's a case law for everything. Okay, for every argument. You come up with the argument and then you figure it out later. And this may be a novel approach. It may be unprecedented, but maybe perhaps that is the point, right? Just because it's never been done before doesn't mean that it's not appropriate in this instance, that it be determined that Spotify does have a special relationship. because of the influence that they have. Everything is top down in this situation. It all hinges on whatever Spotify reports to those entities that then wind up doing the payout to the artist. Do you understand what I'm saying? Right. Black letter law does mean something. Next time, don't use Wikipedia, but this it's okay in this instance because they're right. But black letter law does mean something. It means in common law legal systems, black letter law refers to well-established legal rules that are no longer subject to reasonable dispute. And it's an invocation, right? We've seen it in a couple things. We've seen the language, we may have seen it in the past 48 hours. We've seen the language black letter law, which is just it's it's true, but it's also an invocation to influence the perception of the reader, which is like, this is settled. This is absurd because this is settled. And yes and no, right? The special relationship doctrine is settled, that it needs to exist. That doesn't mean that it can't be expanded to include this kind of a relationship. Do you understand what I'm saying? The special relationship doctrine is settled as defined, period. But that doesn't mean that it's not applicable to this situation. Just because there's nothing within the law that talks about relationships based on digital platforms doesn't mean that in this day and age it's not applicable to it. I'm sure they're aware because you think about that in just common debate, right? You think about real debate, not the shit they do on social media, but just in common debate, which is what the law is common debate. You do think about what the other side's counter arguments are going to be and how you can use those in your favor as well. So it's not necessarily a gotcha moment. It's an invocation of who's who's using the same points, but it's coming with a better, more grounded, reasonable argument in the context of this situation. That's where you apply the law, is the context of this situation. You don't just go, "Well, it's not in settled doctrine." Lots of things aren't. Lots of things aren't. So, yeah, it's a posturing, and for their argument, it's the posture that is complementary. This is settled, and this is absurd. There's obviously no special relationship. We do not fall within what has already been defined as a special relationship. Well, okay, comma, and. So, but they're hacking hacking away at it pretty aggressively. This is a short document. We're already more than halfway through. We're on page 14 of 26. So they're slapping it as hard as they can. And I have a basic understanding of what it is that they're arguing. We not only do we not have a special relationship, we're not responsible for um and they're going both ways, right? They don't have a special relationship to these artists. They also don't have a special relationship to those who are behind botting. They're kind of going in both ways, both directions with it. They're just a blob floating, unconnected to and not responsible for anything having to do with anybody. Again, this is top down. The only thing that they are responsible to, and we've talked about this before, is their shareholders and assuring their shareholders that the product that they sell is what they say it is. And part of that is that's where their special relationship is. Part of that is ensuring that botting is limited as much as possible. Because if everything is inflated, then the worth of the product, which is the company, is inflated and not real. And that is a shareholder problem. That's when your shareholders sue you. Yeah. So they're like, we have no relationships to botters or those that benefit from botting, and then artists that get paid residuals. Because our business is with the labels or whoever the licensors are. Thank you. That's exactly right. Get into the black. They like, we just responsible for cashing these checks. Paying artists is not their responsibility in their explanation. They don't pay artists. They don't pay residuals, and they don't license music from artists. They license music from the rights holders, which is the labels, because they're typically taking a catalog. And those are the entities that are responsible for payouts. So they don't have a special relationship with anybody. They're saying there's no benefit to botting. We've discussed this before. I disagree. So, there can be no special relationships there because they don't benefit from botting. Again, I disagree. I think an argument can be made that they do. But, and we don't have a relationship to the people who made this music or what they get paid. That's what they're saying. And so technically cutting the check, right? They don't do that. They don't technically cut the check, but they are the ones who are technically responsible for reporting what the amount is that the check comes from. They don't cut the check. They're responsible for reporting and paying down to the middle entity the amount of money based on their metrics that the check comes from. Goldilocks. No matter how you slice it, artists get left holding the bag wherever their music ends up. It's convoluted, you know, which cup is the ball under nonsense. And you understand why artists hate all of the conglomerates in music. The streamers, the Live Nation concert situation, the ticket situation, the merch situation, all of it is just robbing artists blind. Plaintiff alleges that Spotify is in a special position of confidence and trust and owes a duty to maintain the integrity of its revenue allocation system and has a duty of care to artists whose music it hosts, as we just said. Yes, we did read this, in his initial, in RBX's initial complaint about there has to be a minimum of streams before you even start to get some money, and I think that's BS. It's stuff like that where it's just like, I hate corporations. I hate capitalism because these people are only focused on profits to make themselves rich, and that just infuriates me. It absolutely infuriates me because if all the major corporations, let's just focus on the ones that rule the United States of America. If all of those corporations came together and said, "We are going to drop all of our pricing by 6 to 12% at the same time," it would be a boon for the economy. But they're greedy and selfish, and they don't care about the economy, which is a bottom down, I mean, a bottom up system. Easiest time to become an artist, hardest time to have a living as one. Yeah. And it's always been terrible. Blood boiling rage for real. It's red hot lava infuriating. And that's right. They aren't responsible for anything. They don't have relationships to anything. It's playing in our faces. So I'm going to start that over. Plaintiff alleges that Spotify is in a special position of confidence and trust and owes a duty to maintain the integrity of its revenue allocation system and has a duty of care to artists whose music it hosts. But asserting a legal conclusion does not make it so. Plaintiff alleges no basis for his assertion that the law imposes on Spotify a novel, wide-ranging duty of care to protect every person with music on Spotify from the conduct of third parties. In fact, as noted above, Spotify does not license music directly from or owe royalties directly to plaintiff. And the only legal authority plaintiff cites is inopposite on its face. That section, by its terms, it's talking about case law, addresses only a duty to prevent physical harms to third parties. Oh, well, that is problematic. Plaintiff also has not alleged that Spotify has any relationship, much less a special one, with the person who created the harm, i.e., the third parties allegedly responsible for artificial streaming. Lord, you know what I'm thinking about now? I'm thinking about that damn steak lawsuit where they say Drake is the botter. They're over here in this lawsuit like, you can't prove that we have a special relationship with the third party doing the botting. Meanwhile, there's another lawsuit completely unrelated to this one that is also proposed to be a class action where they're like, Drake is the botter. I think if Drake is the botter, it could be argued that Spotify has a special relationship with him. I'm sorry. Oh, God. These two things existing at the same time is sending me. It really is. The fact that these two things are happening at the same time and are completely unrelated to each other is sending me. Oh my God. This is why I don't and have never had a Spotify account. Period. All we do is make money off this. We're really not responsible for anything. And also because all of these corporations are in league with each other, right? Unless they're just hard ass competitors, but basically they're all in league with each other to promote each other to keep the control going. You control this, I control this. They control that over there. It's in our best interest that everybody maintain control of their thing. You controlling your thing helps me control my thing. That's beautiful. I study botting for a living. It's so rigged. It's all rigged, right? You can't have a YouTube channel without having a Google account. Period. Can't do it. Not possible. You can't have a Threads account without having an Instagram account. Can't do it. Not possible. And then they got their little plugins and they link up together. You type in Spotify in some things that are not related to Spotify, and the little icon pops up. Do you want to install Spotify? No, I don't want to install Spotify. I'm researching Spotify. Google. Why are you asking me if I want to install Spotify? I can tell you're not a looter. Okay, so sorry, that just cracked me up. Plaintiff has also not alleged that Spotify has any relationship, much less a special one, with the person who created the harm, i.e., the third parties allegedly responsible for artificial streaming. That type of special relationship requires a high ability to control that justifies treating the defendant responsible as a matter of law for the third party's conduct. This standard is difficult to meet, as the California Supreme Court has recognized it requires a level of control akin to the parent child relationship. Nothing of the sort is alleged here. I mean, I think Spotify has parent child control. And I'm not referring to like Drake, I'm referring to what winds up being the payout for artists who have music. They're the ones making the rules. They're the one deciding the percentages. They're deciding when the payout happens. They decide who the payout goes to. That's under over 18 vibes. So, yeah. At bottom, no case law, certainly Spotify is aware of none, imposes a special relationship, much less an accompanying legal duty under analogous circumstances. California's economic loss rule bars plaintiff's claim. California's economic loss rule, a rule that courts routinely apply in dismissing negligence claims, also bars plaintiff's claim. California's economic loss rule holds that economic losses are recoverable in contract alone rather than in tort. And this is exactly why artists are getting ripped off by Spotify. I like artists, but they are ruthless, especially for the artist. What are we doing, fam? What are we doing? Every time you click on the Spotify app, they're slitting somebody's throat. What are we doing? But it's convenient, so slit away, I guess. Okay, so the economic loss doctrine applies even where a plaintiff is not in privity of contract with the defendant, blah, blah, blah. Accordingly, when, as in this case, a plaintiff seeks to bring a negligence claim only for economic harms, unaccompanied by personal injury or physical damage to property, California's economic loss rule bars the negligence claim. The primary exception to that general rule of no recovery for negligently inflicted purely economic losses is where the plaintiff and the defendant have a special relationship. But for the reasons discussed above, there is no special relationship between plaintiff and Spotify. In short, plaintiff has attempted to propose a novel and sweeping tort duty because he lacks any cognizable relationship, special or otherwise, with Spotify. The negligence claim should be dismissed. Oh, I love that. That's fantastic. First Friday of every month is Bandcamp Friday, so the full purchase goes right to the artist. Plaintiff further asserts that Spotify's representations about its artificial streaming efforts and policies are inaccurate or misleading in violation of the UCL. The UCL prohibits and provides civil remedies for unfair competition, which it defines as any unlawful, unfair, or fraudulent business act or practice. This is the equivalent of the New York business law, except for California. Here, plaintiff invokes two of the three prongs: allegedly fraudulent business acts and two, allegedly unfair business practices. But plaintiff fails to state a claim under either theory. Number one, plaintiff fails to state a claim under the fraudulent prong. For at least three reasons, plaintiff has not stated a claim under the UCL's fraudulent prong. First, he has not pleaded his claim with particularity. When, as here, a plaintiff brings a claim under the UCL that sounds in fraud, that claim must be pled with particularity under the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. Accordingly, a plaintiff must allege the who, what, when, where, and how of the allegedly false or misleading statements with particularity. Shockingly, sorry, case law. The handful of alleged representations plaintiff points to in the complaint fall short of what Rule 9 requires. For example, the complaint states that in November 2023, Spotify announced its intention to implement a series of new policies designed to protect and strengthen the integrity of its music royalty ecosystem for both emerging and professional artists. This general description comes nowhere close to identifying an actual statement or representation by Spotify, much less how any such statement or representation was false or misleading. They're like, oh, we said it, but you didn't say who at our company said it, where they said it, who they said it to. Okay. This is why I don't know if you were here the other day when we were talking about the lawsuit against Netflix. But in his pleading, he literally has who, what, where, when in terms of false statements. Literally says who, what, where, when, what the quote is, and so forth. And I said at the time, the level of specificity in this filing is insane. But this is also in California, and this is what they're talking about. There's no who, what, where, when, why, and quote of the language and who it was said to, and et cetera, et cetera. I noticed that the Spotify argument is clearly missing an argument against RBX, alleging that Spotify benefits from botted streams due to it boosting their value to advertisers. This is what I was referring to when I was saying that there is definitely a benefit to botting, but we don't know yet. We're on page 17 of 26. So let's see what they say throughout the document. But so far, you're correct that yes, they just say there is no relationship, period. And we're in agreement. There is no benefit to botting, period. And we're in agreement that an argument can be made on this channel. We're in agreement that an argument can be made that that's not true. That's not true. So this general description comes nowhere close to identifying an actual statement or representation by Spotify, much less how any such statement or representation was false or misleading. Similarly, plaintiff states that Spotify has further represented that Belatedly, beginning in early 2025, it will impose financial penalties on labels and distributors when flagrant artificial streaming is detected on their content. Again, this allegation does not include the actual language of the representation. One of the only statements that plaintiff quotes rather than characterizes is language on Spotify's website stating that Spotify put significant engineering resources and research into detecting, mitigating, and removing artificial streaming activity on Spotify, and that as part of these efforts, we conduct daily cleaning to ensure artificial streams are removed from public numbers in the Spotify app. This is essential to ensure a level playing field where nobody is able to use artificial streaming to increase the perceived popularity of their music on Spotify. Plaintiff also quotes the portion of Spotify's website stating that Spotify's requirement that a track be streamed a minimum of 1,000 times within a 12-month period to be included in the royalty pool calculation will eliminate one strategy used to attempt to game the system or hide artificial streaming, as uploaders will no longer be able to generate pennies from an extremely high volume of tracks. Plaintiff, however, has not alleged any explanation of why or how any of the representations or characterizations above were false or misleading. As Judge Coe similarly put it in dismissing a fraud-based claim for failure to satisfy Rule 9, a plaintiff must allege contemporaneous facts that would establish a contradiction between the alleged materially misleading statements and reality. Plaintiff does not allege any facts, contemporaneous or otherwise, that contradict Spotify's alleged representations about its artificial streaming detection efforts and policies. To the contrary, plaintiff concedes that Spotify undertakes efforts to implement countermeasures to fraudulent streaming. So this is an example of what I mean by posturing, right? Plaintiff didn't assert that Spotify does this. Plaintiff asserted that Spotify says Spotify does this. But now that Spotify is the one splitting the hair, they're like, they concede. They conceded in their filing that we do this. That's not what they said. That's not what they said. What they said was that you said that you do it. So, yeah. You need to get the fuck off this channel because I know you're not talking to me. Goodbye. You got the motherfucking nerve to try and tell a grown ass woman with her own agency in life who you don't know what to talk about. You live in life as a lonely ass man, and that's pathetic for you, but it's not my problem. We're not responsible for protecting people from bots, but we have a statement saying we work to stop the harm of bots, right? And the plaintiff did give specific examples. Yes. This is I mean, that was the dead giveaway. Just like Operation Pull Up was the dead giveaway that you are lost and in the wrong place. Telling a grown ass woman what the fuck to talk about with a handle like that, you in the wrong place. Unlike Spotify, we can get your dumbass the fuck up out of here. This ain't a do this, do that channel. You want me to talk about how your mama's a hoe? We can talk about that. Or we could just get back to this. Yeah, I'm not the one. I can see now why these litigants take so long and time is money. Yes. So much back and forth jousting before things have even really begun. Right. This is the pregame. This is the pregame. Motions to dismiss can take years in some circumstances. Years. So, yeah, it's not just court time and real time are two different things, you know? There were people who were like, we were 6 months into the Drake stuff, and people were like, "I don't know. I don't know how long I can go, fam. This has been going on forever." And I was like, on the court calendar, this has been going on for 30 seconds. 6 months in regular time. We are 30 seconds into the litigation of the case. So we in 1 second territory with this filing. We are 1 second into the litigation of this case. And we've been talking about it for 2 months, maybe 3. I don't know. It's the 105th day of January 2026 is all I know. Are you also lost? Is this the thing? Is this the thing? Are you guys over here glazing or caping for niggas who's tired of being embarrassed by Drake? Is that what's happening? Is this a passive thing that's going on? Like, what's happening? Legally Blonde lied to me is hilarious. Ah! No, that's a looter right there. That's a looter. They're very upset about that Iceman album melting like a sad, sad snowman. There are millions of things to watch on YouTube while y'all here if you don't want to watch this. With the absurd idea that you can tell me what to talk about, and I'm going to be like, oh shit, let me switch it up. You must have missed the Murphy Brown lesson from earlier this week. Leaving is free, baby. Wild how we're buried in snow. And Iceman is nowhere to be found. Good Lord. Stop hoeing for Aubrey on this channel. It's sad. Okay, so plaintiff concedes that Spotify undertakes efforts to implement the countermeasures to fraudulent streaming. At bottom, plaintiff's theory rests entirely on the allegation that some artificial streaming, chiefly involving the music of a single artist, Drake. I love how they're trying to downplay it. They brought up one artist. Just because what's her name called the FBI tip line and said some outlandish shit and it wound up in a document does not mean there's any there. Anyway, they brought up some dude, a single artist named Drake on a platform with thousands of artists' music and millions of tracks. Still occurs. This falls far short of pleading that Spotify's representations about its artificial streaming policies and detection efforts were false or misleading. We're almost Done. We're on page 19. Second, plaintiff has failed to allege reliance on any purported misrepresentation. To state a representation-based claim under the UCL, a plaintiff must plead actual reliance on the alleged misrepresentation. And to show actual reliance, a plaintiff must demonstrate that the misrepresentation was an immediate cause of the plaintiff's injury, producing conduct. This court has repeatedly required allegations of actual reliance to adequately plead UCL claims and dismissed claims for failing to meet that requirement. I can tell you one thing, RBX is the law firm that RBX has retained for this case. They working over the weekend, okay? The research has begun. Probably what is going to happen is I would imagine that the judge is probably gonna read this, and they're gonna make some notes of some key arguments that Spotify is making, and the judge is probably gonna come on to the docket and tell RBX's lawyers, "This is when your reply is due, and in your reply, make sure to address this, and this in Spotify's response." Or the judge doesn't come onto the docket and it's just up to RBX's lawyers to know in our reply to this response, we have to knock these things back down. But oftentimes for the sake of efficiency, the judge will come onto the docket and say, like, make sure you address this, and this. Right. So you see how they're splitting the hairs. We've come so far in the almost 2 years now that we've been together. We've come so far with the looters going, "Okay, I can see what's going on here." But the other things that right, you're picking up all of the nuances of in between the lines, not just what is on the page. Okay, so here the complaint does not attempt to plead that plaintiff actually relied on any representation, and it certainly fails to allege that any representation affected plaintiff's behavior or any decision by plaintiff, or more likely his record label, to put his music on Spotify. Indeed, it is not even clear how Spotify's representations about its artificial streaming efforts and policies could have impacted plaintiff's behavior or decision making, even assuming plaintiff had the right to control whether his music was uploaded to Spotify. That only underscores the oddity of plaintiff's attempt to assert a misrepresentation based claim. Third, almost all of the handful of statements that plaintiff identifies are not actionable because they are not capable of being proven false or being interpreted as a statement of objective fact. To be actionable as an affirmative misrepresentation, a statement must make a specific and measurable claim capable of being proved false or of being reasonably interpreted as a statement of objective fact. Plaintiffs quotes language from the website stating that Spotify puts significant engineering resources and research into detecting, mitigating, and removing artificial streaming activity on Spotify so that nothing stands in the way of our mission of giving artists the opportunity to live off their art. That is not your mission. You lie like a dead dog in the street. Your mission is not to make sure that artists can eat off their art. Blasphemy. 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 Just as I thought. The campaign has begun. Who's paying for this one? Is it Drake directly? Is it Aiden Ross? Or is it that racist, what's he call himself? Grand Wizard? Who's paying for and coordinating this effort? You don't know anything about this channel, because if you did know anything about this channel, you would know what I had to say about the Drake blackout or the Drake boycott. So you don't know anything about this channel. You don't even understand the words that are coming out of my mouth as I read this document, because you're at a basic third grade level. And that's unfortunate for you, but that's not my problem. These are all rhetorical questions, by the way. I don't give a good goddamn. You're about to get blocked off the channel. Have a nice day. Eat off their art. You mean like they actually have to use their physical art as the plate they eat the porridge off of? Thanks to the mods for holding it down. Okay, so live off their art, and so that artists, songwriters, and rights holders are paid as fairly as possible for their work. That is laughable. That is laughable. It is absolutely absurd. I know, and I got a lot of blowback for my stance on that, but that's old. That happened, like, I mean, again, we're in the 254th day of January 2026, so that happened, like, 6 fucking years ago in internet time. Good night in the morning. Right. Yeah. We care about artists in so much as we can exploit them so that our shareholders can get rich. If you don't, eat a dick. I can't think of anything else. If you don't eat a dick, what do we look like? No part of that sentence is actionable. They said that statement that's on our website, you can't take any legal action on that. Let's not, this is a very good one. This is a very good one. Let's also not forget all those AI artists that Spotify highlight in their playlists over real humans. I got all sorts of little abs-isms that come out. Baby, they splitting hairs and just bluffing, okay? Yeah, we care about artists so that we can drain the blood out of them and infuse it into us. Facts. It's giving we care about your privacy as another data breach occurs. I saw somebody say, yeah, the way United Healthcare cares about their patients. Give me a break. I guarantee, let's put this statement out on our website. You cannot hold us accountable for this statement. This is why corporations are evil. This is why corporations are evil. And this is why I tell you all, I don't pay attention to, public statements. However, I mean, I'm not in California, but I can tell you that in Washington State, mission statements are actionable. We will sue your ass over this is what it is that you say you do. Here is the experience people are actually having. This is on all your fucking messaging. And this is the experience people are actually having. Yeah, this is our forward public statement. You can't hold us accountable for anything in that statement. I love it. While Spotify's efforts to address artificial streaming are indeed significant under any ordinary use of the term, and plaintiff never plausibly alleges facts to the contrary, significant is too subjective a term to be a specific and measurable claim capable of being proven false. So evil. They are so, so, so evil. Spotify is so evil. Spotify is like we intentionally use specifically vague language that we can't be held accountable. We said significant. Well, there is no specific and measurable standard for significant. We worded it in ambiguity on purpose, in legal ambiguity on purpose. This is hilarious. This isn't the Drake Rico lawsuit. This is the RBX versus Spotify, where RBX used Drake as an example. Drake is not a party to this case. I think significant is a pretty significant term, but he does have a point. What is the legal definition of significant? Significant as compared to what? Nothing. Significant as compared to doing nothing? I guess anything could be described as significant when compared to doing nothing. It is giving, that depends on what your definition of is. Hats off to you for that reference. That's William Jefferson Clinton, for those of you who don't know. We be quoting former presidents on here and the Federalists. We've gone from everything from Andrew Jackson to William Jefferson Clinton. It's crazy. Oh, goodness gracious. So, yeah. Okay, don't you start now. Hung like a horse. I didn't need that reminder. We learned this during the Monica Lewinsky years. I didn't need the reminder from this recent drop. That Bill Clinton was really working with something during his younger years. Anyway. Oh my God, this is why you got a wrench. This is why you got a wrench right here. Your IQ must be greater than your shoe size to ride this ride. Thank you for watching. Oh, good for you. You're a racist piece of shit, and it shows. Goodbye. Have the day you deserve. Yes, baby, the recent drop. The recent drop. Their emails to the former president about his cigar. If you know, you know. If you know, you know. The no part of that sentence is killing me. But yeah, significant is too subjective a term to be a specific and measurable claim capable of being proven false. The remainder of the sentence about Spotify's mission and paying rights holders as fairly as possible for their work likewise contains no objective statement of fact that plaintiff could attempt to prove are false. Similarly, the complaint alleges that Spotify further stated that it believes this policy of requiring a minimum number of streams will eliminate one strategy used to attempt to game the system or hide artificial streaming. Which I just think is bullshit. These types of purported statements of intention and belief are not objective fact capable of being proven false either. A statement about defendants' beliefs is not a guarantee, and even if it were, transparency is too subjective a term. For each of these independently sufficient reasons, so your reasons are sufficient. Don't get me started. Okay. For each of these independently sufficient reasons, the court should dismiss plaintiff's claim under the UCL's fraudulent prong. Under the UCL's unfair prong, courts consider whether number one, the alleged conduct is tethered to an underlying constitutional, statutory, or regulatory provision or threatens a violation of antitrust law. Number two, the alleged conduct is immoral, unethical, oppressive, unscrupulous, or substantially injurious to consumers. Or number three, whether the practice's impact on the victim outweighs the reasons, justifications, and motives of the alleged wrongdoer. The plaintiff must adequately plead the unfair prong to give proper notice of plaintiff's claim and the grounds on which it lies. Here, plaintiff merely parrots the legal standard, stating that Spotify's alleged conduct offends public policy and is immoral, unethical, oppressive, unscrupulous, and substantially injurious to consumers. Any justification for defendant's practices is outweighed by the consequences and harms to plaintiff. This conclusory assertion alleges no facts that would support plaintiff's position, and his conclusory recitation of one of the UCL's legal standards does not clarify what conduct he claims is unfair or on what allegations in the complaint he relies on for this claim. In any event, it appears that plaintiff's bare bones invocation of the UCL's unfair prong merely repackages his arguments under the fraudulent prong. The complaint states that, in addition to violating the fraudulent prong, Spotify's alleged conduct also violates the unfair prong. As this court has explained, where, as here, the unfair business practice alleged under the unfair prong of the UCL overlap entirely with the business practices addressed in the fraudulent and unlawful prongs of the UCL. The unfair prong of the UCL cannot survive if the claims under the other two prongs of the UCL do not survive. The same approach is warranted here, and the court should dismiss plaintiff's derivative claim under the UCL's unfair prong for the same reasons that it should dismiss his claim under the UCL's fraudulent prong. Claim fails because he cannot recover the equitable relief he requests, which is, in I believe, in layman terms, is basically saying there's no relief that the court has legal authority to award. The UCL does not permit recovery of money damages. Instead, recovery under the statute is limited to the equitable remedies of restitution and injunctive relief. Here, plaintiff requests restitution and disgorgement of defendant's revenues and/or profits. The complaint also purports to seek injunctive relief, but the only specific request for injunctive relief articulated in the complaint is tied to the request for restitution or disgorgement. Plaintiff seeks an order directing defendants to identify, with court supervision, victims of its conduct and pay them restitution and disgorgement of all monies acquired by defendants. Plaintiff cannot seek these remedies as a matter of law for two independent reasons. First, under binding Ninth Circuit precedent, a plaintiff in federal court must allege that he lacks an adequate legal remedy before being able to seek equitable relief under the UCL. So UCL is your last effort, not your first. As this court has recognized, case law does not apply only when the request for a legal remedy is meritorious. Rather, where the claims pleaded by a plaintiff may entitle her to an adequate remedy of law, equitable relief is unavailable. They say her because they're referring to a case involving somebody with he, her pronouns. I mean, with she, her pronouns. Here, plaintiff has not even attempted to plead that he lacks adequate remedies at law. On the contrary, he expressly requests compensatory damages, a legal remedy for his negligence claim. As in this court's decision in another case, plaintiff has not alleged how restitution would differ from the damages he seeks. And also, as in another case, the generalized request for injunctive relief does not suffice to preserve that portion of the UCL claim because it is unclear what additional value plaintiff would receive from injunctive relief if plaintiff obtains money damages through other claims. Second, the monetary relief plaintiff request does not qualify as restitution under the UCL, which is limited to the return of money or property that was once in plaintiff's possession. Mm. The fundamental problem with plaintiff's request for restitution is that plaintiff is not out of pocket at all. In other words, he is not seeking the return of funds he once possessed or in which he had an ownership interest. Rather, he seeks to receive increased royalty payments, but those allegedly underpaid royalties were never in plaintiff's possession. Put another way, plaintiff is calling effectively for a reallocation of payments made by labels and others to rights holders, not for a return of any money he paid to Spotify. That is fatal to plaintiff's attempt to characterize his requested relief as restitution within the meaning of the UCL. Fatal flaw in argument. Finally, plaintiff's request for disgorgement of revenues or profits separate from restitution is plainly unavailable as a matter of law. Non-restitutionary disgorgement is not an available remedy under the statute. Fatal flaw. In short, plaintiff cannot obtain any of the relief he requests under the UCL, and the UCL claim should therefore be dismissed in its entirety. The complaint should be dismissed with prejudice. While Rule 15 provides that courts should freely grant leave to amend, meaning amend your complaint, right? That rule's liberality does not apply when amendment would be futile. That is the case here. Amendment could not cure the fundamental legal defects in plaintiff's claims, including the absence of a duty required to support his negligence claim and the unavailability of equitable relief under the UCL. Accordingly, the court should dismiss the complaint with prejudice. They say the complaint and not the count, which is interesting. The court should dismiss the complaint in its entirety and with prejudice. So, yeah, they're arguing that RBX's attorneys have misapplied the law fatally in this case, and that the statutes under which he is suing don't even allow for the damages that he seeks. That's one thing. And also that there isn't enough specificity in his claims, and he can never establish enough specificity to warrant any of his claims going forward. That's their argument. Disengorgement is a real word, yes. Stormcloud, everything Spotify says is clear and sufficient, but everything RBX says is unclear and vague. Transparency is too subjective of a word. What was the other word? I forgot it already. Substantial is, these words are not specific enough. They don't have any real relevant legal meaning, and they can't be proven true or untrue. It's like, okay, Spotify. Significant. Okay. Yeah, so significant is not a term that you can sue us for, because significant compared to what? There's no measurement. There's no measurement for significant. So they're very, very, as they should be, they're very technical with their arguments. I think some of their arguments appear to be, I'm not a lawyer, but appear to be stronger than others. And some of them just appear to be pure posturing. This is settled. There is no special relationship between Spotify and anybody. Not according to, to existing law. No, we don't fit the definition of a special relationship with anybody. Not to botters, not to people who benefit from botting, not to the artists that get paid for their music being licensed to our platform. We have no special relationship with anybody. So, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. AI titties for all the bots who've come through today. Hmm. Well, robo titties for everybody. Anybody popping in, like, I wonder what's going on in this live stream and sees robo titties for everyone is going to be highly confused, but welcome to the live and whatnot. So, yeah, what comes next is a reply. In the order of sequencing, what comes next is a reply from RBX's attorneys onto the docket, and I would imagine 2 weeks or so, if not a little bit longer. Maybe they have 21 days. I can't remember. They have either 14 or 21 days. So next month, we'll get their reply, and in the interim, we may receive. Shout out to Cassidy Collins. We may receive for your contribution to the docket fund. The judge may come onto the docket and say, "Hey, before you file that, I just want to make sure that you address these specific things in your reply." So we'll see. And again, with a motion to dismiss, a judge can dismiss some of it, all of it, none of it to move forward to the next stage. So per every other case we follow, we'll just have to see what happens. But they hammered it. And even though we know in certain areas, they're definitely splitting hairs and leaving things out and things like that, their response appears to be very strong. And we'll just have to see what RBX's attorneys say in reply to kind of beat back what we perceive to be their strongest arguments there. But the other thing that's really interesting about reading the document is Spotify doesn't care if they come across as a hypocrite in this document. They don't really care. You can't hold us to account for the public statements on our website. They're not legally specific enough for you to be able to do that. Which means nobody can, including consumers, just regular consumers. That's the thing that is really unfortunate in this situation is, short of there being a huge divulgence of proof of botting. And when I say proof, I mean who, what, where, when, how, right? We've got little bits and pieces out throughout the years of things that have happened online that have made us, take notice and have started to compile. But short of there being like proof that this is happening, there's not going to be a consumer-led action against an entity like Spotify, because we're the consumer. The artist is not the consumer. And so just being the artist and not the consumer is hard for the artist to, you know, make a showing of I am an impacted party because we're talking about capitalism here. And what is the relationship between the consumer and the company producing the whatever or providing the whatever? And we're never going to know as the consumer. We're not in a position to know these things. and then know that we have, like, rights to say, "You can't do that to us." Well, if by some measure, and I'm not gonna read the argument, the second document that they made to, say this can't be a class action because it's just really freaking wonky. And it'll put me to sleep. So it'll definitely put you to sleep. But it would be nice if they would at least say something publicly, but they're not gonna, right? But if this, by some miracle survives into a class action, they won't have to. Many of them will already be included as an impacted class. So it is a duck, unfortunately. It is the built-in you can give StreamYard a website to turn into a QR code. This isn't a QR code that I have generated like I did in the books. Um, and have it put it on screen for you, and they put their logo is a duck, and they put it in the center. It's annoying, and I keep forgetting actually to take it down, so I put it up at some point in time for something. We were reading something, but I use it. I use it fairly sparingly. I need to remember, which I won't, but I need to remember to just generate my own for the Cash App and add it to my frame. And they're not going to do that, right? If all the artists agreed to take their music off that platform, the consumers will definitely be motivated to do something. No, they wouldn't. They would just go to a different means to get their music. That's a false equivalency. You can't say that because I don't use Spotify. So, artists taking their music off Spotify, to me, is a complete positive. I don't think there's any negative impact, at all, period. And it would just cause, Spotify to tank. But it wouldn't it would not you cannot assert that an immediate and obvious and unavoidable result of artists taking their music off Spotify is means the consumer is gonna do something. They're not gonna do anything except for go find it somewhere else. So, I don't agree with that line of rationale because one does not automatically lead us to that. So, but I think that where we are now is, you know, we're getting into this we're getting to a point where just in, like, the timeline, where these entities have been around for a very long time, but now their cornering of the market, right, has really been established for, like, 5, 6, 7 years, if not longer. But one of the things that I think is happening around these various lawsuits, whether it's bots on Spotify or, what's happening with stake, these digital related lawsuits in particular. One of the things that I believe is happening is it usually takes at least 5 years of a data set to try and prove something in court. And I think that that's playing into quite a bit. And I think that whether this lawsuit fails or succeeds, we're going to see things like this heretofore. It's just, and it will take some people failing before others are successful in figuring out how to go at these conglomerates, what the actual successful legal arguments are to start to, and I'm not referring to antitrust, but just like break things open, create actual transparency into the workings of these corporations behind the scenes and the degree to which they are, ripping off the source of their business, in this case, the artist, and then how that impacts the consumer. Unfortunately, consumers are often, especially in these kinds of situations, often the last group to realize that they are being harmed by something. Because just as a commenter said earlier, I like Spotify. I mean, they are ruthless to artists, but I can just open my phone and click this thing and listen to whatever it is that I want to listen to. And we are a convenience first culture. We will put convenience over human atrocities. That's why we have smartphones. We don't care about the working conditions of the people in other countries who make the phones. We care that we get the phone, right? And when I say we, I don't mean individual, I mean the collective. There's no critical mass of care, of caring to, because for me, care is a verb. It's not just an emotion of like, oh, I feel some kind of way about that. No, no. Care is an action word. It is a verb. And you have to hit a critical mass of people, of awareness that something is wrong, and then, oh, hell fuck no. We gonna do something about it. We're not there yet on streaming. People don't care because it is convenient. I'm still Spotify consumers are not gonna care. They're really not going to care, right? So, let's break down what the action item is. Is it suing Spotify or is it leaving Spotify, right? Getting consumers to care to the point that they leave Spotify, I think is great. I beat the drum on here for a solid 6 months. Y'all need to cancel your Spotifys and pick something else. Do something different. Because they are particularly evil in how they wield their hammer. Um, so consumers leaving Spotify could absolutely happen in a way that is damaging to Spotify and causes them to change things. Like, I don't know, paying people, you know, uh, residuals that they could actually live off of. Paying them from the offset when their music is uploaded. Saying you have to wait until 1,000 streams are done before you get paid is absurd. That would be like me, you know, selling my book on Amazon, which I don't. And Amazon saying, "Okay, sell 1,000 copies, and then we'll start paying you at 1,001." Abso-fucking-lutely not. No, that's not okay. And for them to say, "Well, it keeps botting down because people are gonna, pay bots to get them to that 1,001." Fuck you. Just deploy. What precludes you from just deploying the same measures that you deploy anyway to smaller artists with new uploads? Nothing. It's bullshit. Absolute bullshit. In reality, pennies add up to dollars. And I would imagine there are a lot of very, very small artists or indie artists that can get those 1,000 streams from real people. Pennies add up to dollars. So if you think of a single artist, oh, you're not getting paid for 1,000 streams. That's nothing. 80% of artists on Spotify getting paid some pennies. and there are thousands of artists on Spotify, that's gonna add up year over year. And they've just made the decision for quality control that they don't pay for the first 1,000. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. But even consumers couldn't sue off of Spotify saying, "Our mission is to ensure that, all artists can eat off of their work or live off of their work." That's not what we pay them for. That's not in our user agreement. Not when I say we, I mean y'all, because I don't use them. But that's not what the consumer is subscribing to, like they are in a different platform that says every first Friday, this money goes to. That's different. You're paying to access the thing. You're not subscribing to Spotify. There's nowhere in the user agreement that says this is a moral, economic support for artists, and Spotify is just a pass through that takes a little bit off the top. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't villainize people for the choices they make, as we live in a society of convenience, right? I stream music. I don't use Spotify. That's where I draw my line, because I know the chokehold that Spotify and its shareholders have uh, in the industry. The relationships, the corporate relationships that they have that also stranglehold artists. They're just particularly evil. So that's where I draw my line. I still buy physical music. I still get things directly from artists, and I still stream music. No, I hate Apple. I use Amazon Music primarily. So there are people who can be like, they're no better. They're not positioned the same on the playing field. So, and I know I've been saying for over a year, I'm gonna leave Amazon. I'm gonna leave Amazon. And I haven't yet. And that's all I can say. As I said, we're all hypocrites. I haven't yet. What do you want? Title is still around. Yes. And every once in a while I do have a title subscription depending on what's going on. They have the full Prince catalog on title. They do, every once in a while they're doing something with Beyonce where I'm like, well, I guess it's title for however long. So yeah. Yeah. Apple is I hated, I was an early user of the iPhone. Um and music is an essential part of my life, and I absolutely hated the way that they organized music in the app. Made me insane. It was infuriating to me. It was nonsensical. It never got to a point where it made good sense. And I was just becoming increasingly annoyed with, again, I grew up in a super, engineering techie family. And so just things that they were doing, like, you could damn near run over an iPhone in the beginning and it wouldn't be damaged. They intentionally changed the screen of their phone to something substandard so that they could then, you know, charge you for repairing the phone, and if you drop it, you are more likely to break it, so that you have to replace it, or you have to do this, that, and the other to get it fixed. Or I was like, "You're fucked up. I don't like that. We don't do that." And then I saw a report about how people in other countries who actually make these phones were committing suicide, throwing themselves off the top of their warehouses in the warehouse district, which is massive, because they were so stressed out and so overwhelmed and not able to meet their respective quotas for whatever they had to do at their station, that they were throwing themselves off the roof of their warehouses. And Apple's response to that was to install nets. That was their only fundamental change. They didn't increase pay, they didn't change quotas, they installed nets to catch you because it fucks up the workday when people go upstairs and throw themselves off the roof. And I was like, "Fuck Apple." And that was over a decade ago. And I'm also a PC, so, I've worked with the Mac and the MacBook and all of that stuff and dealt with that. I don't like it. I just don't. I also don't like the way that, Apple Pay fucks over content creators on certain platforms. They take an egregious amount from it, number 1, and number 2, they make you wait a minimum of 75 days for a payout when people use Apple Pay. It's stupid. You could be waiting 75 to 95 days for a payout. They're like, "Yeah, we got your money. We ain't paid it out yet." It's just dumb. So, I remember, yes, like, you know, when it was simple, but once they clicked that over to the phone, and then it was just a nightmare, and I just didn't like it. My brain, has preferences for how information is organized in tech, and they just could never get it together for me. So, that was probably the feature that I used most on any given phone is music, and now YouTube, but is music. 75 is stupid, and it's infuriating because, like, you know yeah, if you're using Apple Pay, I'm not seeing your money for a long time on any platform. It's just stupid. Baby, the new TOS is the old TOS. The difference is now an American company is responsible for all of that data. I am watching TikTok, um, eh, am I considering reconsidering using TikTok as a platform for your content in light of the new TOS? So here's the thing. TikTok is not a platform that I am invested in. I don't upload there consistently. I don't go live there consistently. I initially had a TikTok account as an op account so that I could see when somebody was talking about something that was happening exclusively on TikTok so that I could see what it was. That's the same reason why I have an X account, so that I can see what is happening when it's happening exclusively over there. I got a little bit more active in it in the past couple months, but it will never be a place that I invest in because it's too strenuous of a task to do it. TikTok has to be your platform, or you have to have a viral moment for your TikTok to go. Um, and I don't have that kind of time. I barely have the time that I need to and the resource that I need to invest in YouTube being my main platform. So, right now, I'm still doing the same thing, I'll go live on occasion, I'll post something on occasion, but, the algorithm doesn't like me, and, uh, y I'm not a dumb person, and I've worked in communications for a very long time across various different platforms. I know how algorithms change and all of that, and I just don't think that Imma go like that on YouTube. I don't think I'm gonna have some viral moment. I don't, and There are people who I get a lot of comments for people who think I'm really boring, and I don't care because I can't be a caricature of a Black woman to entertain you. And when I see people like that on social media, I'm amazed. I'm amazed that you yell in every fucking video. I'm amazed that you have the energy to do that. I literally, physically do not have the energy to do that and record it, you know, 10 to 50 different times to make sure I can make it look like it was all one take and I'm speaking at a rapid pace and, I'm being, I just don't have the energy to do that. So I know that there are some people on TikTok who are quote unquote boring, and I follow many of them, especially people who talk about politics. Because I feel like those people are extremely real and they're having a real conversation and they're presenting themselves in a very real way. But I don't have the energy to go onto TikTok and be a caricature, and I don't have the time to, create assets consistently for it as a platform. So I'm still using it for ops. Um, and I'm watching the the user slash creator experience as it is as it has transferred over to these companies. Um, I think that TikTok is definitely going to be weaponized in a way that we have never seen before. And I want to be able to see what that actually looks like when it goes down. So that's why I still have a TikTok. Yeah, I don't like it. I'm automatically like, I don't like that. I don't like you. I don't want to hear that. I don't like the take you're giving. I've said this before. I reductiveness really irritates me. And so when I'm watching people try to get it all in 60 seconds, in my head, I know what you're leaving out. And then I look at the numbers of people who are watching your shit and I get disgusted because you may be the only source of information for them on this topic. And you're just trying to get it in 60 seconds and get them to watch you talking and for them to have kind of an emotional reaction to how it is that you frame the thing so that they'll keep watching you because you've made them have an emotional reaction, usually outrage. And I don't have it in me to do that. I tried one video on here where I was gonna be yelling at George Clooney, and I recorded it, and then I watched it back, and I was like, "Well, I left out this, I left out this." I'm too invested in the particulars, right? And so I recorded it again, and then I immediately got tired, and I was like, "I don't have the energy for this. I don't have the energy for this." And the video that I wound up putting out was nothing like what I thought I needed to do to produce that kind of content. I was like, "I just ain't got it. I ain't got it." Yeah, there are some things where it's like, I don't know why you're yelling. I mean, I do know why you're yelling, but this doesn't warrant yelling. And then there are some takes that I just think are completely atrocious. Like in the past 24 hours, I've seen people say like, the Don Lemon arrest is a great thing because it just proves that the media is under threat and now Don Lemon is going to be one of the most successful independent journalists in the moment. And I'm just looking at these people like, what the fuck is the matter with you? Does the federal government not realize what they just did for Don Lemon and all of his platforms? Like, oh my God, we already know that journalists are under attack, but now he's and they're just thinking it is like so ironic that shut the fuck up. Horrible take. Number one, it's reductive, it's erasure, it's not what's happening in the moment. Somebody said a couple days ago that people are really focused on how civil rights leaders are portrayed now and freedom fighters and people that were persecuted, because Don Lemon is not a civil rights leader, but people who are in this performative, be on social media and perform their outrage, perform their resistance. They are or storm a church and perform your I'm the new black leader bullshit. People are focused on the portrayal and the perception of the portrayal of people from the historic civil rights movement today, instead of focusing on what they went through and how they were portrayed in the moment, which was awful. Which was absolutely awful. People were not fans. They were not quoting the speeches. So it grinds my gears. It really grinds my gears. And I just wanted to let you all know that. And I just like, and I'm like, okay, yeah. It's minstrelsy on a whole nother level that people willingly participate in, and they don't even realize that that's actually what they're doing. Well, people watch me, so yeah, they're watching you, coon. People do not speak that way in real life. That is not how people talk. In real life, you don't get to sit down and record take after take after take after take until you think you got it just right for your audience and for the views. That's not real life. And then you got people going, you're so smart. These people are not smart. They're rapid reading. Didn't stutter, didn't have no script. A lot of them watch their eyes. Watch their eyes. Some of them have really good memorization skills, and they can just stare at the screen and they can just go off the dome. They've recorded it more than once. I promise you they have. Other people have a script. You can see them. You can see their eyes move to it and then come back very quickly. And that's fine. I do scripted videos. But this idea that you can present yourself as some polished person who can just rapidly just drill out these facts and details with that's not real. I be telling y'all all the time, I don't know, I got to go research it. You know? Oh, you're so smart. It's because I research. And then after I've researched it, 90% of it leaves my brain. I'm researching something else. But I'm not trying to give some false air of authority or intelligence to the audience. I'm not trying to do that. I know I'm smart. I do know that. I know I have very good comprehension skills. And I know that I'm not afraid to be wrong. And I put paramount value on learning. And I see a lot of that. I see a lot of that. I see a lot of people who just want to be first and then are wrong with the facts. And that infuriates me. because a lot of them, I mean, we've had this conversation. It's touched this channel every once in a while. Well, people will cite me, but the shit they say is completely wrong. I'm like, "Oh, baby, you didn't watch my video. You just took a screenshot." And according to blah, 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 that's not what the fuck it said. And I know it didn't say that because I read the whole thing live and you didn't watch. You posted your video before the live was even over because you want to be first and you want to be fastest. Because clicks and views are your paramount focus. They're not my paramount focus. That's how I was raised. That's how I was raised. The I don't know is peak integrity. I don't know is peak integrity. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm just like, I was wrong. I'll say it from 1 minute to the next. I'm pretty sure that what this means is blah, 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 and then we read 3 more sentences, and I'm like, "Well, I was wrong about that." Or I'll come back and tell y'all, "Yesterday I said blah, 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 blah. Now upon further research, that ain't what it is." I was wrong about that. Being wrong is not a negative. It's just not. And it's unfortunate that that is automatically equated to being stupid. People who are wrong aren't necessarily stupid. People who are stupid are often wrong. So, I know that there's a difference. Gargamesh, Gargamel. Well, some people also don't know how to deal with, like, being ridiculed, bullied, or feeling embarrassed, right? And so when you talk about men in particular, and I bring up men because they control the media sphere, including this platform. Y'all watch them much more than you watch me. I know the stat. Um, Men are allergic to that, and they're presenting a very specific way for a very specific reason. And because they assume that that's what makes the audience have confidence in them to keep returning. And that's also not how real life works. I remember when I realized that I was in my 20s, but I remember learning through real life circumstance what it does to the power of your existence as a human being to change your mind about something that you fundamentally believed in or committed to. In my case, there were a couple pretty significant political positions, and there were some pretty significant relationships as well, where I was like, to death. To death, I will be in relationship with these people. To death, I will hold these political opinions. And then both of those things became detrimental to me and people who I loved. And again, I was young. I didn't have, for as much as I had good examples around me, I still had influential examples around me of like stick to your guns and, the ego, just the ego of being young and like, but I love him. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. Um, You would not know me today if I had not changed my mind about those things. I might not even be alive. And that's why I can easily say to y'all today, presented with new evidence, I will change my mind about anything, period. I will say I was wrong, period. Yeah. Too many people see being right as something for their ego instead of something for the collective need for clarity and truth. That's right. And that's why um when I say like I want to win, I believe in my, you know, in my values, part of winning means you have to be right. You have to be right in principle, you have to be right in theory, you have to be right on the facts in order to win. But it doesn't have to be about you. It has to be about the thing. And so as we've been talking over the last week about ego and credit and how people perceive the thing that you do and who's going to be the face of the thing and who's going to be the voice of the thing. There are times where I have been the face and the voice of the thing where I look gusto. I did not want to be there. I did not want to be the person doing it. I like being behind the scenes. I thought when I was younger, I'm going to be out. I'm not afraid to, and I'm not afraid. I just understand how they can make people a distraction and weaponize people against people. And so strategically, I don't care who gets the credit for the thing. I care that I brought such a tight A game to the person in positional power that they did what I advised them to do. That's all I care about. I don't care if people know. I don't then get on social media and be like, "Did you see such and such say and do such?" That was me. I did that. Me. No, no, nope, 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 nope. You won't see that from me. So, yeah, I mean, people are fragile and egos are fragile, and nobody wants to look dumb, and nobody wants to be embarrassed, and nobody wants to be ridiculed for doing or saying something dumb. That's just part of the human condition. And so for some people, they're like, "Well, I ain't gonna speak on it because you ain't gonna call me stupid." And then for other people, they're just like, "I'm gonna be loud, strong, and wrong, and you ain't gonna check me." And they think to themselves, "Well, I'm not gonna issue an apology or correction for that 'cause who cares?" You'd be surprised. Who cares? Or that's not gonna get as much views as this, and that's boring content, or okay, all right. You're in it for the bag, and that's where you place your value. Your integrity was fucked off a long time ago. So, yeah, we're not equally yoked, you and me. So, I literally just advised somebody about such a situation. They chose not to listen, and that's fine. That's their process. But yeah, the weaponization, the all of those things, and then just also like, as I've said before, one of my mottos is "Who the fuck is you?" And that's a real ego checker. Everybody can be replaced. Nobody is bigger than the program. And who the fuck is you? People really need to apply that to themselves and bring themselves down a couple pegs. And, really, really, I keep repeating myself, but really realize it's not about you. It's not about you. And I hope more people come to realize that this year in the service of, you know, saving the American people. Also boring content, but still, it's a priority over here. Oh, yeah, and I don't do that. I'm not one of those people, as we've discussed many and many a time. I'm not one of those people who's gonna throw up the shield of intention because I've spent the last how old am I? Right. I've spent the last 30 years tearing down that excuse and getting people to understand it's not the point. Impact is the point. Fallout is the point. Effect is the point. Net gains and net losses are the point. Those are the things that have to actually be dealt with, not the intention. So, yeah. Yeah. Let's see what else is going on. I feel like I'm still disappointed, as I said yesterday. I'm sure we'll probably have another live tomorrow, and we'll talk about we'll have our episode 2, I think, of Black people mentioned in the Epstein files. So we'll talk about that then, so we can give some proper context again to the people who are on the fucking internet screaming at the top of their heads in their little rapid fire speech that Jay-Z was in the Epstein files. But we'll talk about that tomorrow. And in the course of that, we'll be able to talk about some of the other things that have come out this weekend. But I said all of that to say I am largely disappointed in the media landscape this morning. I don't know what's going on in terms of like trending on social media. I don't know how high up the Epstein files or individual people within the Epstein files are. But in terms of just, like mainstream media, even independent mainstream media, they appear to still be trying to juggle, Don Lemon, uh the Epstein files, and then whatever else is top of mind in the administration of crazy pants. And that's just really disappointing to me. I really wanted to wake up today and see the timelines just flooded with nothing but Epstein, just overwhelmingly Epstein. And it's not that at all. At least for me. Everybody's algo is different. But at least for me, I'm seeing it, but it's not overwhelming. It's still a lot of Don Lemon and persecution of the press, which is an important topic, not saying it should, take second fiddle. I'm just saying what I said last night, which is unfortunate that our news media has been so hacked away at over the last decade plus that it no longer has the capacity to juggle two things at the same time. And I think their strategy to wait and do a mass dump, as I said at the beginning of the week, was a overwhelming success for the president. Overwhelming success. He didn't even have to bomb Iran. All he had to do was arrest Black people. Now we're talking about freedom of the press. Mhm. Yeah, that's different. They're their own special case, okay? They're their own special case. Forums are gonna forum. That's what they're there for. Um, Having said that, I am hopeful that by the time we gather tomorrow, which will probably be about the same time as we've gathered today, which was about uh, roughly about 10 a.m. Pacific time, um, hopefully there will be more and we'll be able to talk about those things as well. I mean, I'm sorry, but I'm also glad. Again, everybody's algo is a little bit different. And depending on the platform that you're on, but I just want it to be overwhelming. And I want us to hurry up and move to the next phase of who is going to sue. Because there have been what I have seen this morning, and as I've seen some, very knowledgeable professionals saying, well, here's what's not there that we know that they have. Because I've seen it with my own eyes. They haven't released this, they haven't released it. That's really helpful. My question is, who the fuck is gonna sue these people? Is it gonna be a group of the survivors? Is it gonna be some lawmakers? Like, I am so sick and tired of this. I'm I'm just gonna be perfectly honest with you, and this is not the fault of the survivors, okay? Because I know that they are getting a lot of advice, everything from communications to lawyers telling them what they can and cannot do. But I just wanna say that I am sick and tired of hearing statements on behalf of the victims saying that the release is a complete betrayal and what they expected was full and complete transparency, and they feel like they are in the legal position that they can't say anything until the Epstein files come out. Fuck that. Name names. You're the victim. You have firsthand knowledge. You were there. You know what you said to the FBI. Nothing precludes you from saying it to the public. Just say it. This stalemate of it was all on the government and we've been waiting, and until they do it, we can't affirm or deny any of the fuck that. And I know they've got lawyers telling them, you can't do that. You will be sued. Be sued. You're going to have to make a different choice yourselves instead of trying to shame a shameless government into releasing damaging information about the people they are protecting the most is an absurd expectation. Absurd. So either speak or sue or come up with different public messaging, because it's been the same public messaging for over a year and it's having no effect. You are an actual party to this. This is what I'm saying. I feel for them entirely, entirely. But waiting on the government, you got to be fucking joking me. Just because you're a victim doesn't mean you can't also be a biscuit head. Let's be clear that some of these people full-throatedly support Donald Trump and many of his policies and really believed him when he said, I'm going to release the Epstein files. And they're only now starting to disavow their full-throated support for him as president of the United States. How the fuck do you full-throatedly support this man and his policies for president of the United States when you know from firsthand knowledge that he is a rapist and a pedophile? Make it make sense. It doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense whatsoever that a single Epstein survivor supported Donald Trump for any reason whatsoever. I don't give a fuck what he promised to do as president. Trying to make a deal with the devil, and now you're mad that the devil won't do his part, but he's already got your soul. So what the fuck does he need to do anything for? Nothing. There are more victims ongoing, and we know that there are more victims ongoing because they didn't fully redact their names from this latest drop. So there are names now coming out that people had no idea were victims of Jeffrey Epstein. But at the same time, they swear they missed the deadline to release things because they wanted to be super, uber, triple, extra, extra careful not to accidentally release information about victims. They just keep releasing more information about victims with each drop. Why haven't any of those people sued? Rhetorical question. I'm just, this stalemate is serving nothing. And this, we can't do anything until the federal government fuck that. I'm sick of that shit. I think Pan Bondi is off having a crisis somewhere. I think that she and KKK Caroline probably sit in a room together and just like have an existential meltdown. You know, I think that she's getting to the point where she no longer wants to face the press on certain things because we see her deputy being the one to stand up. She didn't come out. She wasn't the one briefing yesterday about what was going on with the Epstein files. That was her deputy. That to me was very telling. She doesn't want to be the person standing before the media saying the things, which are their reasons and excuses and rationale, and then having to deal with questions from the press. But a scapegoat, Pam Bondi is a willing participant in this regime. She's part of the tip of the sword, as a matter of fact. He would not be able to accomplish 90% of the shit that he does without somebody like Pam Bondi actively doing what she does in her role. She's not just sitting there, softly being associated with things. She's part of the tip of the sword, and she's happy to be there otherwise. But I think because that these are people who came in to take control and rule with an iron fist, whatever their domain is, DOJ, the pulpit, press briefing, the FBI, whatever. They're going to control it, and they're going to make it Department of War. They're going to make it do. And I think where they get into existential meltdown is when they come up against the things they realize they can't unilaterally control. And they don't know how to mitigate or navigate those things. And I think it enrages them. I think if Pam Bondi could arrest reporters in briefings for the questions they asked, she would. That's why they berate. That's why, but she was all over social media. We will go after you. She had a recorded statement. She doesn't have to look actual people in the eye. And for some of these people in the administration, it's becoming harder and harder for them to look people in the eye. And I think that's just great. But scapegoat? Oh, we're not going to give her scapegoat. She's a co-conspirator. Yeah, that's what I said in my episode earlier this week about the Democrats just kind of throwing up their hands and also taking a bunch of, longest routes to get there in terms of the Epstein files. Is that a massive drop of files at the same time is going to overwhelm. And it puts the impetus on the media to find the things. And once again, there were things in the drop that were damning to Donald Trump. They've taken him down. That was within hours of them saying no consideration was given to the president. Nothing was redacted because it involved the president. No, you just publish it and then unpublish it altogether. As soon as people go, oh, look, here's a document about somebody reporting to the FBI that the president forced a 13-year-old to give him a blowjob. 15 minutes after those videos start populating on social media, that document is gone from the website. But you got the nerve to stand in front of people and say, we're not redacting or not publishing things because it involves the president. And yet you just did. And you've done it damn near at each round and been caught in the process of doing it. And you still do it. Playing in people's fucking faces. It's maddening. It really is. I mean, people are talking about former Prince Andrew and Jay-Z and Pusha T. Because Jaguar Wright called the FBI hotline and left some bullshit. I said what I said. That's my personal opinion. Jay-Z. Somebody called the FBI tip line and said Jay-Z's name. If it's not Jaguar Wright, it's her twin sister, Ragwar Knight. Okay, and then the internet wants to get in all a tizzy over that, baby. Don't disrupt my sleep. I'm taking a nap. Y'all hush down. Y'all quiet down over there. Yeah, I don't think Stockholm Syndrome had anything to do with it, but you are correct. That is true. Like I said, her twin sister, Ragwar Knight. Maybe they're triplets. Raggedy Cougar Right. Tiger Left. You all? Here we go. Oh, shit. Here go the chat. Oh, shit. Here go the chat. Lagarde wrong. Ah, that's very good. That is very, very good. That's very good. I'm bulletproof. So, yeah. Yeah, we like I said, we're gonna talk about it tomorrow, but I didn't pay it no mind. Somebody brought it up in the chat last night. I hadn't heard about it, but after I got off live and before I fucking fell into a coma, I did go online and look and see what is the context of these names coming up, and I saw that and I was like, shit, I'm going to bed. Forgot about dinner and all that, and I took my black ass to bed. I was like, I cannot be bothered to read any further. Thank you. Good night. Bill Gates is getting more heat. Andrew getting heat. Like, I'm just like, they keep saying like Donald Trump is mentioned hundreds of times in the last drop, and there are a lot of emails about him, and there are this, that, and the other. And there is, so far as we know, right? It takes a lot longer to go through 3.5 million things than it does, 22,000, which again is why I'm like, well, we'll see tomorrow. There appears to be absolutely nothing damning in this release of 3.5 million individual files, except for the one that they took down, that is damning towards Donald Trump. I saw a love note from Melania to Ghislaine. And I'm sorry, I don't believe you. You mean to tell me you dropped 22,000 pages in one drop, and there was a bunch of incriminating shit about Donald Trump in there, some of which you removed, and then you dropped 3.5 million individual files, and the only thing in there is emails of people talking about him? I'm supposed to believe that. I don't believe you. I don't believe you. That the federal government has no integrity. This administration, less than none. So you go from I don't believe you to you lying. I don't believe that's true. You lying. So to me, at this point, we're waiting for whistleblowers, leaks, and lawsuits to get to the real of the 200,000 pages that they have kept back from the public. Wow. Stephanie, wow. Bag war right because it's always about the bag. God damn. Whistleblower is not the appropriate word here. Nothing was revealed, period. This is a caller into a hotline. That's not a whistleblower. A whistleblower brings forth unrefutable evidence that people can see. We are not going to even say that that was a whistleblower situation because it was not. So we're not gonna there may be some people who don't know the difference out there in the world who are framing it in that way, but that's not what that was, and I'm not gonna give it that level of import because the implication is that it's true and that there is verifiable evidence that we can all see to back it up, and none of those things exist. And, so we're gonna leave it there. Okay. Right, and there's a difference between being in the files and being mentioned in something, right? We saw RuPaul was mentioned because they were talking about RuPaul's Drag Race. Jay-Z and Pusha are mentioned because, somebody called a hotline and said some things. There are no travel logs, there are no emails connecting them or their respective camps or staff to each other. The things that are actually evidence that matter, that show a connection and relationship, it doesn't even rise to the level of Chris Tucker, where we can all side eye that situation. So this is just the internet being the internet. It's just like when Tony Busby named Jay-Z and the internet went crazy over unverified, unspecified, hyperbolic, obvious bullshit. And I sat here calm and as cool as a cucumber, like people need to pull themselves the fuck together. 'Cause I don't think that's what this is. And I was proven right. I was on to Tony Busby early, I'll just say. Just pat myself on the back for that one. And I'm not a Jay-Z defender. I don't do that. I don't, you know, I'm not one of those Rock Nation diehards or I don't do that. I go off of verifiable information, not people's accusations, not people's claims, not none of that shit. Bagwar Wright being on, Pierce Morgan, spewing her bullshit. I don't rely on any of that. So I was unmoved. Oh, well, that's one of the highest compliments anybody could pay me. You are my decompressor. My decompression. You are a glass of wine. I'm so happy. I'm so happy because I do not have the energy to be Mad Dog 2020. I don't have the energy to be Mad Dog 2020. And then we all making bad decisions, okay? It's not even necessarily that people are, eating it up that they necessarily believe it. We are a truth and drama society as well as we are a society of convenience, right? And there's a whole economic system that runs on truth and gossip and just and it's really gross. Um, but people are really just, um for me, the people who, as you say, eat it up and spread it around and gossip about people because that actually makes them feel good to do that. Those are the same people within our own community who get Black people on TikTok to kill themselves. I think they are the worst amongst us. And I don't pay any attention to them. And they're a sick, sick echo chamber. And they feel like the more they say something or the more they hear one of their compatriots say it, the more true it becomes. And if you believe that about anything in the world, you're just dumb. And reason and stupid don't sit at the same table. We don't even share snacks. Those people are stupid. And I keep them out of my line of sight. So tomorrow we will talk about how Rock Nation is destroying the world. Okay. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that tomorrow. But it was good to see you all. I don't think I will be back today. The only other thing that happened today that made me go, damn, that hurts. Minnesota law enforcement lost their temporary restraining order against the feds for the evidence in the Alex Preddy murder. Both Alex Preddy and Renee's Preddy are represented by exceptional lawyers, some former prosecutors as well, which is great, and they're going to need them. So I'm a little surprised, very disappointed. I really expected Minnesota to be successful with this effort. I also didn't expect what we read in the declarations from the government, the FBI recounting what it is they did to evidence collection, HSI, uh, CUBP. I didn't expect those things to come on the docket. And I'm sure that the judge, even without reading her decision, she has nothing to refute them, and neither does the state. I'm sure she found them very compelling, and therefore she knocked down the TRO. So it's unfortunate, but that's where things stand. I know. Y'all are so great. Y'all are so great. Um, so yeah, unfortunate, but it is where things are at, and we'll see what comes next. We'll see what comes next. And like you said, let's not speak too soon. 24 hours, boy, baby. They've been cramming in a lot in these days, okay? But if I don't see you again, um congratulate yourself for making it to the 364th day of January 2026. Um I hope February is better. I don't think it will be, but we'll be in it together. I made a rhyme. Y'all have a wonderful day. I'll see you soon. Peace.